Christian colleges are now inviting non-Christians to create anti-racist curriculum. If you don't know how to not be racist, odds are you never really were Christian organizations to begin with. I'm Dr. Duke, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, flying solo again. Katie won't be with us. And this is still the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start with a head-scratcher after Christian colleges invite non-Christian organizations to help to develop curriculum entitled, quote, Christian Leadership in a Multi-Faith World. So if you want to know why we're losing the culture wars, you want to know why Christianity is becoming irrelevant, you want to know why kids aren't going to church and the attitude of Christian churches among Americans is plummeting, that's because of stuff like this. You won't stand up for what you actually believe. You will not defend your Christian ideology. You will not defend biblical principles. You will not defend the injunctions of Christ, the teachings of Christ. Rather, your job is to find ways to incorporate social justice and to use Christ as a scapegoat in some ways to justify your social justice posturing. And this is a classical example. In a forthcoming curriculum program on Christian leadership, Christian colleges are partnering with unexpected sources, non-Christians, because that's who you want to help you make policy for Christians. The Council for Christian Colleges and Universities, which says it represents about 150 institutions in North America, developed an online curriculum with Interfaith Youth Corps titled Christian Leadership in a Multi-Faith World. The grant program for CCCU faculty and staff is intended to be either integrated into existing college courses or co-curricular leadership programs on CCCU campuses, offering a series of online-related activities. The program here is to explore, quote, explore the Christian foundation for interfaith engagement, build students' religious literacy, and equip students to lead bridge-building activities in their community. So we're going to examine here the foundations of Christian faith engagement. That's social justice code for we're going to see what bothers people about the foundations of Christianity. We're going to work awfully hard to minimize those Christian elements, to please non-Christians, so we all have the same political agenda, and we water down the religious differences between us. Well, we sacrifice Christian values as a nod to interdisciplinary, interfaith engagement, and we teach religious, not Christian literacy. It's stunning to me how many young Christians are Christian illiterate. Staggering to me how many young people who claim to be Christians are utterly biblically illiterate. They are theologically illiterate. They cannot critical think. They lack any sense of understanding of apologetics or ability to explain what the tenets and defend the tenets of the faith. So now we're going to go, instead of Christian literacy, we're going to do religious literacy, which means we're going to make sure that our kids are 100% versed on how other religions do things and those ways that they do it better or more inclusively or more welcomingly. And what that means, again, is an erosion of Christian values in the face of agreement. Think of the United Nations and what serious membership in the United Nations means. If you're going to be a serious partner that the UN takes seriously, it means you're going to have to give up significant aspects of your sovereignty to be part of a bigger global movement. That's what's happening here. And are we surprised? We have the Roman Catholic Pope, who's already made these concessions, who's made arguments that there are certain aspects of Christian faith that offend people, and we have to be able to incorporate those people without offending them. The willingness to tamp this down. We see the Church of England, which is a huge disaster. You've got the Archbishop of Canterbury making similar statements. At one point, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, not the one we have now, actually made the observation that if things like the Trinity bother Muslims, Islam, well, maybe it wasn't that big of a deal anyway. Maybe we can swap those ideas for a greater harmony and understanding between the both of us. A spokesperson did not make an official available for an interview about this, but instead provided a written statement that largely repeats simply its messaging about the curriculum. The group also couldn't define systemic racism. Wouldn't give us an answer for that. Couldn't define systemic racism, a phrase that appears on the very first line of the request for proposals from CCCU faculty and staff. So it starts out talking not about Christianity, not about biblical worldview, but it starts by talking about systemic racism. And here's the cat out of the bag. The point of this is that Christianity, as the primary religion of Western culture for the last 2,000 years, is inherently racist. The systems of Christianity, the churches, the theology, the philosophy, the outreach, the ministry, the missionary work, all of that is systemically racist now. Nothing you can do about it. The only thing you can do to fix it is to change. Now, do you think that this interfaith agreement, these interfaith curricula reaching out, is going to call to account the colonization of Islam, the effectively 1,400 years of a colonial vision that you believe what we believe or we will not get along, we will wage war, we will engage you on those fronts? Do you think that's going to get called out? I don't think that's going to get called out. What's going to get called out, that will never be systematic racism. That will never be systemic bigotry because it's a non-Western culture, you see. And we know that terms like systemic bigotry apply only to Western cultures. This is the gatekeepers of Christianity giving away the faith in the name of globalism and social justice. I suppose we shouldn't be terribly surprised by this. Every other American institution's going that way. We've lost the colleges. We've lost the public schools. We've lost entertainment. We've lost the journalists. We've lost the newsmen. What's left? The big social tech giants have all gone that way. This is, and I should probably make it very clear, this is first and foremost about building a one world understanding, one government, one world. And look, everybody's going to have to give in a little bit, right? You know, certainly Christianity is going to have to do its part to bring about this unity, which means one Tower of Babel government. Everybody's speaking the same political language. If that costs us the particularity of Christ, if that costs us salvation as we understand it, if that allows us to rewrite the words of Christ to be something they're not, it's a small price to pay for global inclusion, isn't it? The curriculum is being developed in partnership with faculty from Minnesota's Bethel University, which is affiliated with Converge, the brand name of the Baptist General Conference. It has received monetary support from the Arthur Vining Davis Foundation, which promotes interfaith leadership. The curriculum, again, explores, quote, the Christian foundation of interfaith engagement. It builds students' literacy in religion, not Christianity, and equips students to build bridges between Christianity and other religions. And how do you do that? By changing what Christianity is so that a bridge can be built. The desire for cultural competence is echoed in the opening line of the request for proposals. This is that opening sentences. Today we are reckoning with systemic racism in our nation and a pandemic in the world. These crises emerge against a backdrop of growing diversity and deepening division. And you know what that diversity means? That Christianity is the systemic racism, and all that diversity of difference is non-Western religions telling us how we've dropped the ball and have to change to accommodate them. And how does this play out when Christians across the world, and particularly across the West, decide that they got to give up their fundamental Christian heritage and those serious theological and dogmatic aspects of Christianity, you know, like the way to salvation is Jesus exclusively, got to give that up in the name of global harmony? How does the larger American culture react to that? Do you think the larger globalists in the world, the largest secular progressives in America, do you think that they're just so grateful for the Christians willing to reach out and how wonderful they're going to help Christians maintain their identity while everybody else is being co-opted? No, that's not how it works. Our next story is living, breathing proof of this from the public schools in Tennessee. We have a Tennessee school district that bans T-shirts that say homosexuality is sin. Of course they do. It's in the name of bridge building, right? This is in the name of mutual interfaith cooperation. LGBTQ is a religion now, right? We got to understand that it's a global religion. So you can't wear what you want in Tennessee after Livingston Academy banned a T-shirt saying homosexuality is a sin and then citing as document for that belief 1 Corinthians 6, chapters 9 to 10. A lawsuit is now in the works claiming First Amendment violations. The female student is challenging the constitutionality of Overton County Board of Education's dress code policy, both as written and applied to her, and they are seeking an injunction against its continued enforcement. Well, what happened? The federal lawsuit claims that the teacher who sent her to the principal's office on August 25th had a pro-homosexuality symbol in the classroom. The principal allegedly told her it violated the dress code because her shirt was sexually connotative. So there are images of gay pride in the schoolroom, and yet this kid was singled out because her shirt apparently was sexually connotative. I got news for you. If you are promoting LGBTQ propaganda in the classroom, you are being sexually connotative. Anyway, the principal called her parents to bring a change of clothes, but the student's stepmother took her home instead, refusing to do that. She was then marked absent for the entire day of school. And as we've seen before, the process is the punishment, right? You exercise your... Protest is a wonderful thing to progressives unless you're protesting them, and then they'll just, rather than excuse you... It's too bad. It's really too bad. She wasn't protesting for Black Lives Matter. Because I guarantee you, if she was forced to take that t-shirt off and parents took her home, there would be no absence recorded. Frank Lamonti, the director of the University of Florida's Brechner Center for Freedom of Information and a longtime head of the Student Press Law Center, said, quote, "These school speech cases always boil down to what level of disruption the school can show that the speech has provoked, or realistically will provoke. And as far as we know, there were no student complaints. There was no student anger. There was no uproar. There was no outrage. This was a teacher whose own agenda was highlighted in her classroom, her pro-gay agenda. But when the student showed up with her opinion, she nixed it, and that's the story. If a student wore a t-shirt with a Confederate flag and it caused a fight on school grounds, the school can ban it, even if the wearer had no intent to cite violence, is the precedent that Lomonte talks about. But none of that stuff happened in this instance. There were apparently no complaints, and yet this teacher took it upon herself to do this, him or herself to do this, and the rest is history. She is now accounted absent from the school, and we can only hope that the parents do the right thing and pull her out of that public school and put her in a school where she can express her values. Alas, as we saw from the previous story, there are not a lot of Christian schools anymore that would allow you to wear a biblically based argument about sexuality like that. I would bet most, probably 8 out of 10 so-called Christian schools in this country would not let you wear that biblically explicatory t-shirt. You wouldn't be able to get away with it even in the Christian schools. That's where this is moving, and we're heading there fast. Last week, we brought you news of 2 different stories about people being persecuted for their beliefs on college campuses. The first one, you may recall, is we have two updates to these stories, and both of them have happy endings. So once these tyrannical policies on universities were challenged by students and the students were persecuted on campus, well, sooner or later, the tide turned here for both of these stories. So you may recall them from last week. We have a story update here. We reported last week on the University of Northern Iowa and how the student government there refused to recognize a chapter of Students for Life. They would not allow a chapter of that organization on campus because they decided that pro-life views, according to the student government, was hate crime, hate speech. The group then appealed to the student government Supreme Court, who upheld the decision to discriminate against this organization simply because they were pro-life. We did mention last week as well, the university president in this case, which is a rarity, actually was a good guy. He came to the rescue of free speech on campus. And he deserves to be mentioned. UNI President Mark A. Nook, who is the last option. He's the one who has authority over the Supreme Court of the student government. And the fact that you're giving college kids, idiot college kids, a Supreme Court of student government shows you just how out of hand and who really is running these institutions. Well, the only power higher than the student government Supreme Court was the president. And in this case, the president cited the First Amendment. Good for him. He said, quote, "Neither the university nor NISG, Northern Iowa student government, can endorse any student organization's viewpoints by approving them as student organizations. By denying them recognition when they intend in good faith to engage in lawful activity, we deny them their right to free speech and assembly guaranteed in the First Amendment. Now again, do I believe that Mr. Nook is a flaming conservative, one of the few in college academia administrations? No. But he's smart enough to know, as a liberal, that this is not going to pass muster once it gets off campus. And how much is it going to cost the university to fight? And how many universities will fight and spend taxpayer money and taxpayer tuition dollars to fight this kind of stuff, and when they know they're going to lose in court to First Amendment aware judges? It's a bizarre situation. He did the right thing. Spare the university the cost and expense of trying to defend the indefendable simply because it goes along with your political worldview. The Constitution is the hallmark here, and he cited it. Student Senator Caleb Steckel, one of the student governors who oversaw this transformation of pro-life policy, pro-life campus groups into hate crimes, Steckel said, he's also a self-avowed Democrat socialist. He compared the organization to the KKK. He said that to approve this organization would be, quote, an absolute disgrace to student funds, to the institution of student government. So, pro-life kids whose money is taken in great big quantities like pro-choice kids are having their money taken. They are not allowed to be represented in this. It would be an offense to student government. And by the argument, what this Caleb Steckel, young little Nazi wannabe, is making the point about, he's not a democratic socialist. He is a little fascist. What he's basically saying is, not only will we not recognize them as a club, but in reality, we should not be allowing into the university any student who has a pro-life worldview. That's the extent of this. He continued to say that if it was allowed on campus, it would be a smack in the face of the years of hard work that women and activists have done to kill babies. I put the little parentheses in there. When it was mentioned that the university could get sued if the student government didn't approve the group, Steckel said, and I quote, "That's just a complete preference or privileging of money and of admins over student well-being." So this young college Democrat who's been elected to student government is more than happy to have the university sued, more than happy to have the president of that university sued and censored for violations of the Constitution if it conforms to his political platform. This is the kind of intolerant little Nazi that we're breeding in public schools. When it was mentioned that the university could get sued, Caleb said, that's a complete preference or privileging of money and the administration's reputation over student well-being. I think it's extremely offensive to claim that we should be more concerned about the university's checkbooks and about university lawyers than, the rights, the legal rights and protections of women. And those protections and legal rights, according to ignorant Caleb, include the right not to be around people who differ in opinion. This is how far it's gotten. And one more update on a story from last week. We reported on Florida State University student Jack Denton, who was the student Senate president, the president of student government, until he was removed for privately stating his own deeply held Catholic beliefs. A federal judge, now this one did get off campus, because Florida State University, maybe Caleb should transfer from Northern Iowa to FSU because they're willing to spend all kinds of money to get beat in court. So what happened was a federal judge ordered the university to pay Denton for his salary, but then the judge refused to reinstate him to his position, finding that he was so hated by his colleagues for his religious views that he couldn't effectively serve as a president. But finally, the student Supreme Court at FSU overturned the vote of no confidence and ordered Denton not only to be paid, but to be reinstated. So a combination of an outside judge and a recognition again that the constitutional values trump your stupid liberal politics got that kid replaced. Again, the process is the problem. You wonder how much angst, how much time was wasted, almost half a semester where he could have been governing as president, as he was elected to do, lost to him now, but he's back. And the university had to pay him. There you go. Time now for another instant classic. It's times like these we miss Katie. She gives such wonderful introductions to these, but I'll pick up the slack here and I'll talk to you today about a poem from William Carlos Williams from 1923 entitled The Red Wheelbarrow. And now I got to tell you, this is a reflective Dr. Duke moment. When I was a sophomore in college, a little Catholic college in Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, St. Edward's High School in Lakewood, Ohio, I had a great English professor for my sophomore year, Brother Joe. Brother Joe was a really stickler. People were just afraid of him. He's about 4'10" tall, but he really worked us hard. He had us reading all sorts of books. I read about 150 books that year alone in his class outside of the coursework we were doing. That included things like grammar and sentence structure. He really taught me how to write and to read well. But he once put this poem in front of us as a class. It's a short poem from Carlos Williams, which reads as follows. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Being a sophomore and somewhat callow, I, among other people, raised my hand and says, well, Brother Joe, what is so important? Brother, what is so important about the red wheelbarrow glazed with rain beside the white chickens? He just smiled, never told us. And that was the first I learned about the enigmatic, right? The idea that not everything has to have an answer. I still don't know. I mean, I'm an English professor. I teach complicated poetry all the time. I can appreciate the poem for its syntax and its playing with norms of capitalization. It's not a unpleasant little poem to read, but I'm not sure anybody still knows what so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. If there's any biographical help, we do know we have this note from Williams himself about the poem. And William Carlos Williams wrote, quote, "The red wheelbarrow sprang from my affection for an old Negro named Marshall. He had been a fisherman, caught porgies off Gloucester. He used to tell me how he had to work in the cold, freezing weather, standing ankle deep in cracked ice, packing down the fish. He said he didn't feel the cold. He never felt cold in his life until just recently. I liked the man and his son Milton almost as much. In his backyard, I saw the red wheelbarrow, surrounded by the white chickens. I suppose my affection for the old man somehow got into my writing." Now, there's no way Brother Joe could have known it, and no way I could have known it. But that's your instant classic for today. Ponder it. Why does so much depend upon that red wheelbarrow? As always, if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation of $99 once a year. You're going to get your tax deduction, and you're going to get a nice tumbler. This is our Freedom Never Tasted So Good tumbler. Stainless steel. I promise you, it will hold all your beverages and never leak. So if you like what we're doing here, help us circumvent the big tech companies that are demonetizing our platform simply because our perspective is not liberal. Visit us at patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to become a Pat Riot member. Now let's wrap things up with our fun fact of the day. Pope John Paul II was the first non-Italian pope in Italy in more than 400 years. And during his tenure, he traveled to a whopping 129 different countries, logging more than 750,000 miles, which is about 3 times the distance of the moon. One wonders if he's rolling over on his halo, knowing that he who fought the communists has been replaced now by a communist. And that's going to do it for the show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She would be Katie if she's here. I suspect she probably is still Katie, wherever she may be. Until next time, stay Katie, my friends.